Welcome to the World of Eora, a news and lore podcast about the Pillars of Eternity games, as well as Obsidian Entertainment's upcoming release, Avowed. Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the World of Eora. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino. Thanks everyone so much for joining me as we dive into another episode of the lore, history, and game mechanics for Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2 as we gear up for the release of Avowed. We bring all those games into one fold because they all share the same fantasy setting known as Eora. So as the theory goes, we dive into the Pillars series so we can glean insights as Avowed undergoes development and just appreciate what the game's nuances and writing will be when it finally comes to release. We can walk into that game with an equal knowledge base as a community. Sorry for posting this episode a little bit late. Things have been hectic over here at the Gingerino household. Well, not super hectic. We're just planning on a quick vacation for the mom and child of the house, and then she also has to start a new job pretty soon, so things have been a little upside down and backwards, so sorry for the late release. But I have a fun episode today, one I've been looking forward to doing, and one that I thought would actually have a lot more lore to it, so there's not as much lore, unfortunately, as I was hoping to find, but there is enough lore to talk about today. We're going to be discussing a unique creature in this world called Vithracks, which, as I've described them, are essentially humanoid psychic spiders. And that's all it is. I don't know how else to say. So they're one of my favorite creatures in this world. They aren't just base bestial creatures. Like, they do have sentience, they have intelligence, and they're very interesting to interact with. And I think that there's a lot of potential with Vithracks. I also think that we'll probably see Vithracks in Avowed. I would be surprised if we didn't see at least one or hear of one in some way, shape, or form. And so this episode is helping prepare for that. No news or anything of that sort for Pillars of Eternity or Avowed as far as I know, so without further ado, let's dive straight into the lore.
I'm curious. What exactly did you find there?
If at any point in today's episode you have a question or a criticism, something like that you want to send me an email for, you can reach me worldofeora@gmail.com. Just putting that out front so that those of you who do have a question who don't make it all the way to the end, you maybe end the episode early, now you know how to reach me. I've been getting a lot more emails lately asking questions and pointing out some of my errors. I like talking about it, and it's really fun to get into conversations about this stuff. And so today we're going to be talking about one of the unique creatures that exist in this world of Eora known as a Vithrack. Vithrack are, as I've described it, a humanoid psychic spider. And they've existed in this world for a very long time. They're not relatively new like some of the newer creatures or species within the world. They've been around for quite a while. I'm going to be looking at the information primarily from pillarsofeternity.fandom.com. That's where we're going to be getting most of this information from. But you can get descriptions in-game for them. You can get them out of the lore books for both Pillars of Eternity games. Vithracks are reclusive spider-like races that have advanced intelligence, extraordinary capabilities, and seem to possess the ability to connect to an individual's soul, albeit with horrifying consequences. Feared for their mental powers and extreme hostility, the Vithrack were once eagerly pursued by animancers for research purposes. However, the dangerous nature and rarity of the Vithrack combined with their inhuman physiology have proven to be insurmountable obstacles in understanding how their powers work. So this overview description of what a Vithrack is pretty much, it sums up like what they are. They are a reclusive spider-like race. They have advanced intelligence and extraordinary capabilities. The thing that really stands out about them, however, I would say, is their psionic abilities. And so in this line here, possessing the ability to connect to an individual's soul. At one point in Pillars of Eternity, you run into a Vithrack. Well, actually, you run into a lot of Vithracks, but there's one Vithrack in particular whose name I'm going to pronounce as Charek, or Charek. It's Tcharek. When you first run into them, the dialogue bubble pops up at the bottom of the screen, and you read this. You feel a scratching sensation in your head, followed by a sudden high-pitched ringing. Scattered images flash within your mind's eye. You see a mass of nets, set against a cavern wall, stretching up into the darkness, a vast network of webs, somewhere far beneath the surface. You see, too, the sentries you have recently slain, their bodies lying crumpled on the cavern floor. This text bubble is in response to you meeting this creature, and this creature reaches out to talk to you, but they don't talk with words, obviously. What they do is they talk to you telepathically, but not mind to mind, but soul to soul. And they transmit sensations into your mind, or your soul into your head, is what it says here. In other interactions with Vithrack creatures, it even talks about having emotive experiences. Like you get sensations in your mind, you get a scratching in your head, or you get a ringing in your ears, and it's also accompanied with a feeling of like soft rage or something like that. And that's how they speak, right? So this is how the Vithracks primarily speak to other creatures, because I think it's just a sort of screeches and clicks if they tried to do it physiologically with just like what would be their mouths. This is how Vithrack communicates. And it also implies, and you see this first on, that they have strong cipher abilities. Cipher abilities being psionic-based abilities that we would see in other kinds of fantasy RPGs, kind of the psychic-ish stuff. Blast waves into your mind, they can attack you mentally, they could try to give you illusions or something like that. They have all these psionic-based powers, and they're incredibly hostile towards other people. And that's because they're very reclusive. They like to be by themselves, they're hostile towards people who aren't them. I imagine that, when you see a spider, like in most games and in most fantasy worlds, and as, if I was a person who lived in a world like this and I saw a giant spider, if I had the option to kill it, I probably would, right? So how would I know in a moment's breath between a giant hostile cave spider versus this advanced, intelligent, sentient creature that just looks like a spider? How would I know the difference, right? And so they've probably been the victim of a lot of, we'll say, persecution. Really, it's just people have been probably killing them left, right, and center. So that's why they're reclusive, I would imagine. As it mentions here, animancers, which are scientists in this world who study the soul and the stuff that the soul is made of, they tried to research Vithrack because of the psionic powers that they have, but nothing really came out of it. You can acquire an item in the game called Vithrack Brain, and when you read the description for the Vithrack Brain, it does point out that there doesn't seem to be anything special about the brain itself that makes them able to do what they do psionically with these mental powers. And again, I think that is because it's not so much about the brain in this world, it's more about the soul and the connection that two creatures have that both have a soul. So I think that what these animancers are mistaking is that the brain is going to be where this is coming from. That being said, I know when I did an episode on animancy, feel free to check that out if you're interested on the science of the soul for this world, they did do experimentations trying to look at soul energy that was in the brain of the regular Kith creatures that we interact with in the advanced civilizations of this world. And so there does seem to be a connection to the brain and the soul, but we don't really know what that is, and maybe it doesn't work that way for Vithrack. Vithrack are extremely rare and very dangerous creatures with natural cipher powers. I'm reading from the next paragraph in the Pillars of Eternity fandom article. They are mostly humanoid in shape, slightly taller and thinner than humans, but with horrific fang spider-like heads. Like spiders, they are capable of spinning silk, though they use it to make their own very intricate and fine robes. Males and females are indistinguishable from each other. They are primarily spellcasters and mental manipulators like ciphers, though they will also attack with their fangs when forced into melee combat. Despite their extreme intelligence and power, Vithrack are not a major force in the world due to their extremely low birth rates. A great city will typically contain only several hundred souls. So here we learned a little bit more about some of the biology of Vithracks and what their day-to-day life is like, like what they are in a sense. So we've already talked about how they have natural cipher powers. They have this innate psionic ability. They're humanoid in shape, tall and thin, and obviously scary looking. The males and females are indistinguishable, and the thing that's interesting here for me is that they are extremely intelligent and powerful, and really, honestly, they probably could be a major force within the world of Eora if their nature and their wills and volition told them to do so. But they do have extremely low birth rates. They just don't produce a lot of children. It doesn't say here why that is, but if you look at the in-game description for it, it says these low birth rates are likely responsible for their famed hostility towards other races. They have also made the Vithrack highly altruistic when it comes to their own kind. They will defend their nests to the death. Now again, this doesn't explain why they have low birth rates, but it does give a little bit of a clue as to how they operate as a society, that they really value their children, which I mean most races probably do and should, but the Vithrack are, I think, a little bit more because they're even more special to have a surviving child. I, for one, would be really interested in seeing the Vithrack society become one of the major players in the World of Eora, and if I ever do a tabletop role-playing game, then you can bet that I definitely will. But speaking of their society, let's dive into the last of the lore on this webpage. Given their arachnid appearance, it's no surprise that Vithrack have traditionally used spiders as companions and minions. Though highly intelligent and socially organized, little is known about their culture as they are both hostile to outsiders and rare. Little is known about their culture as they are both hostile to outsiders and rare. Their psionic powers allow them to communicate mentally with one another. Like many social insectoids, their society includes a variety of specific roles, including scouts and defenders. While their low birth rates are likely responsible for their hostility towards other races, they have also made the Vithrack highly altruistic when it comes to their own kind. They will defend their nests to the death. That last part, we already read from somewhere, so I didn't need to read it twice, but there you go. So here's just kind of a basic overview of what the society is like. They do have roles within society, so there are some people who fill roles, like one is a scout, one is a defender. So if you were to build out this society in a tabletop role-playing game, that's something to consider. But just for the lore as itself, we don't learn anything else except that they have that. When you are fighting Vithrack within the World of Eora, there are different variants that you find. There's basic Vithracks, there is exarchs, there are brutes, and there are luminaries. So we see the differences there in terms of variants when it comes to combat. But that's also corresponding as well, I believe, to the different roles that exist within their society. Vithrack live in groups of societies known as colonies, and we don't know anything about them other than some of their names. One Vithrack colony that we learn of when we talk to an NPC in the world is called Stravik, which is SSTRAVEK apostrophe NARITH. There's a lot of fantasy going on in that name there. The double S is the apostrophe in the middle of it all. But there you go. You have Stravik, which is one colony that exists somewhere far away from the setting of the first Pillars game. In an area known as Luminescent Caves, we discover an outpost of Vithrack who come from another colony known as Moltusquimir. I don't know if I pronounced that right. MOLTULS apostrophe QU apostrophe MIRR. So we got double R's, double apostrophes. Again, a lot of fantasy going on in that name there. So these really complex names for different colonies, which gives a little bit more of an indication of their society, that they have groups than colonies, maybe provinces or countries. Who knows how they separate themselves based on territory. And that is largely the major chunk of what we have to say when it comes to Vithrack. I myself am a huge fan of the Vithrack species, mostly because I think the first time I ran into him, I had that same kind of experience that I think people are, well, the writers at Obsidian say others would have towards them, or at least that we're inferring. I saw these giant humanoid spiders in a big mega dungeon within the first Pillars game, and I immediately went, nuh-uh, I'm not doing this, I will come back later. And I left and came back when I was a higher level, because I didn't feel like I would be able to go up against these creatures that I was seeing, only to find out that they weren't immediately hostile to me for whatever reason. Even though a lot of the Vithracks that you encounter in the game might be immediately hostile to you because they are reclusive and they are very hostile, naturally speaking, they are still an intelligent, sentient society, and they don't just want to kill for killing's sake because they're bloodthirsty creatures. They want to defend their territory, and that's their nature. But I was able to actually communicate with these Vithrack, learn more about their society, and see the situation that this particular colony was in, and it made me really invested in the Vithrack as a species. This was my first cRPG, after all, Pillars of Eternity 1, and so that was just a really big moment for me. Ever since then, I've been a huge fan of Vithrack. I was very excited in Pillars of Eternity 2 when you can have a Vithrack on your seafaring ship, a Vithrack called Big Mouth, who is a surgeon, if you will, is a surgeon on your boat that you can use to perform surgery or, do doctor stuff on your boat. And it's a giant spider. It's crazy. But I love the Vithrack for that reason, and I hope to see more of them in Avowed. Speaking of which, let's ask, what do these creatures have to do with Avowed?
Is an oath worth the weight of a crown?
The obvious answer would be if there are Vithrack within Avowed, that's how we would interact with them. We know for a fact that we can't play as a Vithrack, which I'm extremely disappointed about, personally speaking, but that's fine, whatever. I'll settle for humans and elves. I'll take that. Maybe there'll be a modding community out there that'll make Vithrack a playable race. But I'm hoping and optimistic that we will run into Vithrack in the Living Lands when we play Avowed. And the reason I think that is because it seems to me that Vithrack can be found anywhere in Eora. You see it in Pillars of Eternity 2, which is in the Deadfire Archipelago, and you see them in the first Pillars game, which is in the Deerwood. And these two areas are completely separate from each other within the world. They also talk about these Vithrack colonies, which exist very far away, and so who knows if it's even on a different continent. As well, Vithrack are such an interesting and unique original creature made by Obsidian Entertainment for the use of this world. I think it would be a waste to not bring them into the Living Lands, especially when you consider that there are going to be biomes and habitats that are conducive to what Vithrack would like to live in. I mean, we already saw a giant spider in the gameplay trailer for Avowed, and Vithrack would probably live in something close to that. That's my guess anyways. So it seems like there's no lore reason why they couldn't be there. It's a unique race that they've all created at Obsidian, and they want to maximize their IP. They're an interesting race that are more than just creatures that you attack for no reason. Like, you can actually interact with them and have side quests maybe go a different direction. Like, they have so much potential from a developer standpoint, in my opinion, that I don't see them not utilizing it. Now, they might not, right? They might decide that including a Vithrack colony or a significant Vithrack experience for whatever reason, it doesn't contribute to the overall Avowed experience that they want to deliver. I don't think that's going to be the case because, again, there's no reason you couldn't even have just one Vithrack that you run into somewhere to have a meaningful interaction with. But who knows? They may or may not develop it. There's so much in the lore for Eora that they can use other assets, they can use other creatures and other lore from different places. But my guess is that they're going to have Vithracks in there somewhere. So when you and I, we each get our hands on Avowed, we need to, let's go find these Vithracks. Race to find the Vithrack. Who's going to be the first person to find one? Watch, now there's going to be one waiting on shore for you. You watch and see that we'll all get it at the same time. But yeah, so I think it'll be there. Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. I know it's a little shorter than normal, but I mean, that's what you're in for. There was not a ton of lore about Vithracks. There was a little bit more to look into, like there was a pair of slippers, for example, that you can wear in the first game, but the only thing that's notable about these slippers is that they're made of Vithrack silk, right? So, which is an interesting thing, like the fact that they do spin silk and that people can harvest this and use it to make things. But there's not a lot of like connected lore or common stuff to talk about that's going to make it more or less interesting. So we've gone over all the major details of what it is you need to know, especially if you haven't played Pillars and you're just getting into Avowed. So if you've enjoyed this episode, thanks so much. Send me an email, worldofeora@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter @worldofeora. I love having conversations about these games and questions about this stuff and criticisms. I love it, right? So reach out to me. Let me know if you have anything that you want to say, any ideas for the show, just your experiences playing Pillars of Eternity. If you're looking forward to Avowed, what you think about Vithracks, if they're great, if they're stupid, I don't care. Just send me an email. I love this kind of stuff, and I like to maintain the conversation as we go along. No news regarding the show at the moment, and I like many others, have only been playing Baldur's Gate since it came out, and so that's what I've been doing. I haven't got very far. I'm still in Act 1 because I can only really play 1 hour at a time on the days I get to play, such as the life of a new dad. I know some of you out there feel my pain. I say pain, but being a dad is actually a great blessing. Best thing I've ever done. But regardless, there's not a lot of gaming time that I get to do, so I haven't really gotten very far in Baldur's Gate. But I've been enjoying it so far, other than a few technical hiccups, which I think I've mentioned on a previous episode. I think it's pretty much a perfect game. I'm loving it so much. Larian knocked it out of the park. It's crazy, actually, when you think about what they've accomplished with the scope of that game. So I've just been playing that. Thanks to those of you who emailed me some of your character builds for Baldur's Gate. That was so cool. A lot of you do role-playing, and I really like that, because I've always just role-played as the same character every time I play a role-playing game. The person's name is Gingerino, and they're a silver-tongued sneaky character. And so it's cool that this is my first game really out the gate doing a role-playing character, and then getting to talk to some of you guys about those different characters that you role-play for Baldur's Gate as well. Anyways, that part's gone on long enough. Thanks for listening, guys. I've been your host, Eric, aka Gingerino, and I'll see you guys next time.